been a while since we've been able to say this, but it's time to say hello, Canada, and welcome in James Duthie of TSN, host, Canadian Screen Award winner, and author, here to talk about his new book and an extraordinary week for soccer in our country. Yeah. How are you? Long time no see.
James.
You well?
Good to see you both, boys. Yeah, I'm awesome, and congratulations to everybody in Vancouver for the season the Whitecaps have had. And I mean, the buzz around this game is spectacular, and then to have the World Cup draw sort of thrown in, it's got to be one of the bigger weeks in the history of soccer, maybe in Vancouver, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, we were just telling you off air, I guess in TV, it's called the lead-in. I guess our game is after his World Cup draw on Friday, right. But I'm not sure there has ever been a bigger week of interest.
Wets the palate.
For soccer in our city.
James, I love it because, you've been doing this a long time. We love this game of hockey. We talk a lot of hockey here. It's great.
Yeah.
But we needed a little bit of diversification. Beyond the Olympics. We take a good bite of the Olympics when they come around, but it's just nice to have focus on another sport that that the rest of the globe plays.
Yeah, it is, and I have this the Whitecaps for me, like the old Whitecaps. I was in Victoria before I moved to Ottawa as a kid. So I was in Victoria from 5 to 9. Mm-hmm. And so the Whitecaps, when the old league was around, were my favorite team. Like Brian Budd was my favorite athlete. Remember when Brian Budd, you guys might be too young, Brian Budd goes on Superstars and he dominated the Superstar. And for any of your listeners that don't know, Superstars was this really cool thing where they put a bunch of athletes together and did all this crazy competitions, and Brian Budd
Gretzky blowing guys away in the sprint.
As I recall, Budgie was a great swimmer. He made up a lot of points in swimming.
That's right. So when you're 10 years old and you're watching that, I'm like, Brian Budd is the greatest athlete in the world, which is probably not far off because I think soccer players are some of the greatest athletes in the world. So anyway, to come around full circle and see the Whitecaps in this game, and to be playing Messi and company, and then to have. I was trying to say the World Cup draw, I think, is the biggest event in sports that's not a sport, right? Like maybe the NFL draft in the States, but as far as worldwide, is there anything bigger in sport that doesn't involve the actual playing of a sport than the World Cup draw?
No, I think that's objectively true. I think people have done those studies on eyeballs on a quote unquote sporting event that is not a sport. And I think that's exactly right. I mean, again, the globe plays it. So it's going to be fun.
So tell us about, so you're not on stage drawing the pots and all that. James, tell us about your show on TSN on Friday.
Yeah, if I was the Canadian celebrity, we'd be in big trouble. I don't know who it's going to be. It's actually a funny story. There was, when they unveiled the schedule, FIFA did a show when they unveiled the schedule. And so they had a U.S. part of it, a Mexican part of it, and a Canadian part of it in the show. And I was hosting the Canadian part of it. And it was me and Bello, who was the interim coach at the time, before they brought on Jesse Marsh. So we were in our studio. And then the American part of it was some Fox host with Kim Kardashian. And then the Mexico host was some huge Mexican pop star. And then it was just me in the studio. And I felt very sheepish then. So no, we will be there. It's at the Kennedy Center in Washington. I'll be with Atiba Hutchinson and Julian de Guzman. And then, of course, our real soccer guys, Luke and Kevin and the boys will be back in studio doing tons of analysis of the draw. But yeah, it's a whole red carpet thing where all the VIPs show up. They will have celebrities on stage. They're not revealing them right now, but they'll be famous athletes from the States. So you can probably make some predictions. And there's a whole red carpet thing. And then we'll sit around and try and figure out what's exactly going to happen here for Canada, because the stakes here feel really big because, this is a once in a lifetime to have it in Canada. And the draw could go so many different ways.
Totally.
The best case scenarios and the worst case scenarios is so massive. So I don't know. If they draw Italy, who's in pot 4, if Italy comes out of one of the UEFA groups, then it would be amazing to have the opening game against Italy in Toronto on June 12th. But at the same time, that would not be good for Canada's chances of advancing. So it's going to be fascinating.
you may have been by yourself, buddy, but think of what the first question from the Fox host to Kim Kardashian would be.
Yeah.
Like, Kim, what do you think? 442 or 433? What?
Yeah. It was a weird show because it was all top secret, and they didn't tell us what was happening, and they only opened our IFBs. So forget for people out there that where you hear the post coming from like 5 minutes before the show. So they open it, and I can hear this guy talking from the host of the show, and I'm like, this guy sounds a lot like Kevin Hart. That's weird. And it was Kevin Hart. So the host of the show was Kevin Hart. So I had this weird moment where Kevin Hart threw to me, and I said, well, that'll never happen again in my podcast.
I'm just scared you're going to show up with butt implants to try to keep pace. So everybody, look at James's ass on Friday and see if he's succumbed to it.
What do you spectacular?
What do you think most Canadians want to see? 3 minnows in the pot give us the best chance to get wins, or group of death just to see Canada against those kinds of teams?
Oh. I think it's the first thing. If this was 4 years ago and it was Canada's first time back in the World Cup, I remember being a little bit disappointed. We hosted that draw when it was kind of a Belgium, Croatian, or
middling,
good sides. But no, we didn't get, then is when I think we needed Argentina or Brazil for Canada to come back in the World Cup, knowing that the expectations weren't high. But now that it's here, and I think every football fan in the country expects or hopes that they'll get out of the group. I look at it the other way, where I would love to see it be, Australia. Let's say somebody like Australia in pot 2. And now I'm doing my pot math in my head, and I don't know, like Scotland or something in pot 3.
Oh man!
And then everybody's favorite country, Cabo Verde, in pot 4.
Yeah.
The one thing that I don't want to lose everybody in the math of the draw, and you guys might have talked about this a lot already, but the chances of Canada getting, Cabo Verde or Jordan or New Zealand are not great in that last pot, which is what everybody's hoping for. Because really, probably one win is going to get you out of the group, right?
Right.
But because they can't play, who am I missing there? They can't play Haiti. They can't play Curacao. And then there's 2 more CONCACAF teams in the playdown, so they can't play. They won't slot them into one of those groups either. And the way all the permutations work, like some of the algorithms in the machines, I think there's probably like an 80% chance that Canada's going to get a European side in that pot, which, could be Italy, could be Denmark, but it's probably going to be a good side. So, it's crazy, but crazy fun.
And while there is some deduction available to people, we don't actually know the schedule until 24 hours later, James. But I mean, we've been sitting here talking like, could you imagine what England or Scotland here in British Columbia playing matches would look like? The streets of downtown Vancouver.
I still don't believe, maybe Vancouver's more of a, I don't believe Canada really understands what it's in store for. And, Blake, you were there, like when our hotel was kind of near where Brazil was staying in Qatar, and there was like 3,000 people around that hotel 24 hours a day, the entire World Cup, just dancing and singing and waiting to watch the bus leave the hotel. So I definitely know, like, Toronto's not ready for, one of these South American countries or European countries to completely invade their city if it happens. So it's going to be spectacular. And the stakes once we get there, because of this draw, like if Canada wins, and excuse me if you guys have already discussed this, but if Canada can somehow win the group and get a favorable draw, not only is their next game in Canada against a third place team, but the path, the group of 16 game is also in Canada if they were to win that game. And they get 8 days rest between, before the group of 32 game. So the advantage is so massive for them to win the group. It's unreal. Second is okay. Third in the group, and they're off to like San Francisco or something to play somebody who won their group, and they're going to be in big trouble. So it's going to be really fun watching the groups unfold and starting to do the math in your head of what it's going to look like.
I think you were about to say there, Vancouver may understand it better than most. Like, how similar was the Olympics here, James, in 2010 to the World Cup experience in terms of just people everywhere all the time?
Yeah, I mean, Qatar was such a unique World Cup because it's a smaller city and everybody sort of congregated in this one area. And so you had the entire world there. So obviously, I guess there's similarities to Vancouver with one downtown. I think it'll be very much like that. I don't know that, the Olympics, I don't know if you could ever recreate that, for 2 weeks of the downtown being packed every single day, but man, I think it'll be close to that. I think part of that depends on what countries are playing there, right? Obviously, some have more passionate, crazy, and larger fan bases than other, depending on the population of the country. Like, I don't know that, I don't know that the population of Cabo Verde is going to swarm downtown Vancouver. I don't even know what the population of Cabo Verde is. I'm going to be doing a lot of research if they end up in the group, but I just found out today.
I'm sure there's a neighborhood in Toronto somewhere where Cabo Verde
everybody's
is.
in Toronto.
Yeah, absolutely. Every country has a neighborhood in Toronto.
Version. Cabo Verde is the official version. I was told this today, so I'm going with Cabo. But
okay.
Yeah. Anyway, I think it's going to be whoever is there. It's going to be, I would say, the most spectacular couple of weeks since 2010. I don't know if we can ever recreate 2010.
One of the other reasons that we've brought you on is to talk about your latest installment of your Beauties series in
product placement in the background there.
In books. Yeah, we're going to bring it up too. Certified Beauties, more of hockey's greatest untold stories. I want to know how you harvest all this. Like, it's one thing to do this book once. How do you keep getting all these great stories, and why? This is my biggest thing. Why don't we hear a lot of the? And maybe people have heard the odd one here in some way, shape, or form before this, but I'm amazed. We work in this industry, and there's still so many. The vast majority of the stories that are in this book I've never heard before. We always talk about hockey having no tall poppies. Nobody wants to stick their neck out and tell us. Is that it? That everybody just keeps the stories inside?
I think so, and I've been super surprised when I started writing the first book, Blake. That was my biggest concern is, would I be able to get guys to tell the stories that what probably where I came up with the idea is sitting on the panel all those years with ex-players and ex-coaches. They'll tell us the stories, when you're sitting with Bob McKenzie and me, but would they tell them in a book? Certainly it's easier with retired players, I think. But I wanted to have a lot of current players on the roster in the book. And I was worried about that because usually we know that the intermission interviews are they give us absolutely nothing. But I found, pleasantly surprised, that if you can get them away from that, either, get them on the phone at home on an off day, or better yet, sit them down in a bar for an hour. And maybe it's the fact that it's a book and that they think it's cool that it's going to be in a book. I don't know. But they are willing to share, and that's the greatest thing for me. The most fun part, doing the book's a lot of work, but the most fun part is when you sit down with a guy, and quite often I don't know the story they're going to tell me. Sometimes I know. Sometimes somebody's told me, "Hey, you got to talk to this guy. He's got an amazing story," and then so I kind of know what the story is. But a lot of times I just book time with somebody who I know is probably a good storyteller and have no idea what they're going to tell me. And when they tell you something that's great, and that readers of the book are going to love it, that's probably the most satisfying feeling.
Well, you've got some samples from Canuckland here. Tell us about Kevin Bieksa and his big break.
Does he have a story? Does Kevin have a story?
Kevin Bieksa has a story. Tell us about Juice and his big break.
First of all, I do not, I don't sit there and go, I got to have 2 Canucks stories, 2 Senators stories, 2 Leaf stories, 2 Jets stories, or something in the book. I don't think about that really. And for whatever reason, this book is super Canucks heavy. There's a ton of Canucks stories for some reason, and a bunch of Oilers stories for some reason. But Bieksa was one of the first guys we went for lunch, I think, at the Stanley Cup final 2 years ago. One of the first interviews I did for the book. And his story was about his rookie year, which is his first full year. He played some games. So that would have been, I think, 2006. and he was still very new. And Marcus Naslund, at the beginning of the season, held a party at his house for all the wives and everything, sort of a team bonding party. And the way Kev tells it, he was pretty nervous, high veterans team with Morrison and Bertuzzi and Naslund and so on, Matt Cook. So everyone was kind of in the middle of the house, but he felt a little awkward. So he went outside with a couple of the other rookies and their wives and just sort of sat down on the patio. And they were serving J-Lore at this Naslund party, and J-Lore by the magnums, I guess. And so the way Kev tells it, it's just J-Lore, and he's not realizing it. They're just talking, having a great conversation, sitting outside, and he thinks it's 45 minutes. And then Marcus Naslund comes out, the captain, and sits down with them. He thinks that's pretty cool. They sit for 2 hours. And when he stands up, finally Naslund's wife comes out and says, it's time to go to bed, guys. And Kev realizes everyone has left from inside, and it's like 2:00 in the morning, and they've been sitting there for 5 hours. And both him and Naslund can barely walk. In fact, Naslund tries to leave, doesn't even think it's his house anymore. But the next day at practice, he throws up all night. And Bieksa tells me he can hold his booze. I don't know. Anyway, throws up all night. Practice the next day, he says the only time in his career, because he's a pro, never does this, that he cannot even basically move on the ice. They're hiding him on the drills, keep pushing him to the back so he doesn't have to do a drill so nobody will notice. And I guess maybe the game before, unbeknownst to Bieksa, Sammy Salo got hurt. And so Vigneault, halfway through practice, says, okay, first power play, and Bieksa, you're on it because Sammy's hurt. So the kind of break he's been waiting for his entire career happens when he's the most hungover he's ever been. And he said every time they passed the puck to him, like he got rid of it right away because he was so scared he was just going to fall down. And Vigneault kept yelling, hold on to the puck, walk the line, hold on to the puck, walk the line. Anyway, he somehow survives, is on the first power play the next game, scores his first NHL goal on the power play, never really looks back, and goes on to have the career he does. So, I don't think he's overindulged in J-Lore since then.
I hope somebody got him a Canucks jersey with J-Lore on the back.
Yeah, absolutely.
That would have been apropos.
Framed. You've got another one. We have Frank Corrado on our show every Wednesday, and the public out here still loves him. James, you got a
what can we hang over his head?
Corrado story we could ask him tomorrow?
I'm not sucking up because he sits next to me on the panel, but I really think going to be one of the stars of as far as TV analysts for the next 20 years. The guy is awesome. And so Frankie's story somehow also involves Bieksa. What a shocker.
Believe it or not.
So Bieksa never told me this story. I had to get it out of Frankie, and then I had to call Bieksa to confirm that it happened. So Frankie's similar thing in that Frankie had a whirlwind last year. He was playing junior. I think he got traded to Kitchener, got cut from the World Junior team, which was devastating. Has a good finish to his junior career in Kitchener. Right away gets called up by the Chicago Wolves, Van's team, and plays 5 games. And he can't even believe he's playing there. And then gets a call in his hotel room one night that says, hey, the Canucks have a bunch of injured defensemen. You're going to Vancouver. This is with 2 or 3 games left in the season. 2013, I think, the year they played the Sharks in the first round, if I have my years right. I'm not great with the years. But so Frankie gets out and goes right into the lineup and plays really well in the 2 or 3 games that he plays at the end of the season. And he thinks that's it. Played well, got to wear the jersey. Can't believe he's in the NHL, 3 weeks after being in junior. And he was never a prospect. He was one of those guys who thought he'd play 5 years in the minors or 3 years in the minors before he made the NHL. But here he is playing for the Canucks. They play San Jose in the first round, and Vigneault leaves him in and plays well, but they get swept, as you all remember. So his first end-of-year team party comes. So he's trying to keep a low profile. They go somewhere. They end up at the Roxy, of course. And during the night, he's noticing that there's tension between Bieksa and Zach Kassian. Like they're giving each other little chirps here and there. And he thinks it's odd, but he doesn't know the dynamic in the room. So the party moves, I guess, from the Roxy to somebody's apartment or condo. Anyway, they are in the cab together. It's Andrew Ebbett and Corrado and Bieksa and Kassian. And they're still going at it. They get out of the cab, they get onto the elevator, and a full-fledged fist fight breaks out between Bieksa and Kassian, complete with Superman punches and the whole thing. and Frankie Corrado and Ebbett are in the middle of it, not knowing what the hell to do. Basically, at some point, I think the elevator stopped between floors or whatever, and Frankie gets absolutely popped. And he still has no idea if it was Bieksa or Cassian, but he gets completely nailed in the eye. I don't know if that slows down the fight, but whatever happens, the fight breaks up. Cassian leaves, I think. Bieksa, by the way, as an aside, tells me he goes home eventually, and he starts getting calls like in the middle of the night from Cassian, who's still walking around downtown Vancouver saying, "Get out here, let's finish this thing," right? Anyway, Frankie's got the worst shiner, like your typical Rocky Balboa, blackest of black eyes. And the next day they have their exit meetings. And so he's got to go in and sit down with Mike Gillis. And Mike Gillis knows that Frankie Corrado didn't get a black eye from a high stick or whatever in the series. He watched the games. And so this rookie who's been there for a week, basically, or 2 weeks, has to sit down with Mike Gillis with this complete black eye. He said, by the way, Gillis handled it, didn't really say anything. He wasn't sure if Gillis knew or didn't know, if somebody told him. He says Gillis made some sort of sly remark at the end, like, watch yourself in elevators. So I think he did know. But somebody put a referee shirt, I guess, on his locker. So that was Frankie's baptism into the NHL.
Oh my
By the way,
God.
the exit told me, like, Cassian comes in the next day. They meet at the end, the big hug and laugh it off. What a great night it was, which is the most hockey thing ever.
Yeah.
These
Yes.
guys have a complete fist fight, and the next night they're hugging in the lobby. But that was Frankie's welcome to the NHL moment.
Do you know where
All
my-
I know is Kevin Bieksa must have had a lot of J. Lore in him if he's taken on Zach Cassian.
Well, was it-
Yeah,
I don't want
if
to.
you didn't know anything about Kevin and you only read this book, you would think he was the most delinquent, unprofessional guy in the history of the league,
And of course,
which I love.
Fedorov also knows a thing or two
that's
about
it.
this
Like,
as well.
This is
so-
not even the famous Fedorov story from Juice.
But it also makes me think, James,
Oh, wow.
Canucks fans should be commending now Elias Pettersson and JT Miller.
Exactly.
That
Right. You never got that far.
it never got that
Nobody
far.
threw hands.
Yeah.
At least not that
Anyway,
we know of.
there's
Until-
I think there's 6 or 7 chapters that have Canucks stories. I probably shouldn't have told the whole stories there. I'm not very good at teasing the book when I can.
Oh, there's more. There's
There's
Brendan
more.
Morrison stories.
Yeah.
I've got to look at my list here, but there's Brendan Morrison stories and Jason Strudwick, Gino Ojic stories, Darcy Hordichuk stories.
One of my favorite chapters in the book, Darcy Hordichuk tells a whole whack of stories, including one where he leaves an alligator that he caught, a live alligator on Luongo's porch, but that was in Florida. But a lot of Hordichuk's chapter is about the times in Vancouver, and he is an absolute nut bar. I don't know if you've ever had him on, but
Oh, yeah.
James, we had him on a few
Luongo
years
says he's one
ago.
of the craziest guys he's ever had.
I covered him in Saskatoon. He's been like this since a kid.
We had him on several years ago for a special like Christmas week, catching up with old Canucks. I could not believe what Darcy said on the show and off the show.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
But I believed every
He tried to
syllable
buy
of it.
Luongo's G-Wagon with gift cards. Like, and I said, you're joking, right? Like, I said, no. He tried to buy my G-Wagon with gift cards, like $200 at Tim Hortons, $200 at Best Buy or whatever. That's what he was trying to buy my G-Wagon.
Just a stack. Are we the only sport that uses beauty? Because I hear these and literally I'm just stopping myself from going, what a beauty. Are we the only sport that uses the word beauties?
I think hockey, I think it does move over to probably some other stuff like lacrosse, but I think it's hockey is its origin. And, I had no title when I wrote the first book, I had no title. It was something goofy like Hockey's Greatest Untold Stories, which I think is the sort of sub-headline here. And it was only when I was listening, I record all the interviews, and it was only when I was listening to all the interviews that I realized that every single one of them was saying, oh, that guy was such a beauty. And so I figured that was probably the perfect name for it.
All right.
You're a beauty, James
You are
Duthie, and
too.
so is his book, Certified Beauties, more of hockey's greatest untold stories. You can get it at Amazon, Indigo, wherever you get your books. We'll be watching with interest on Friday, and Mr. Duthie, just know, if the Whitecaps lift MLS Cup on Saturday, we do expect a TSN engraved on a nation documentary to follow, right?
I saw somebody say that. And there better be
TFC
one.
got theirs. We need
Yeah.
ours if Whitecaps win on Saturday. So we'll expect you to push
I will
that file at Agent Court.
Storm into the executive's room.
Exactly.
And make sure that happens. No, look, I don't get to cheer much. It was funny. I went to the Jays World Series games, and I was like in the stands with a beer cheering. I wasn't working at all, of course, and I'm like, man, what's the last time I went to a game and got to cheer? And you guys know what it's like. You get sucked up in this business and you don't really root for anything. But I'll be rooting hard for the Whitecaps because all the memories from my youth come out, and it would be so awesome if they can pull that off. And then I'll be rooting for not to get Norway and Italy in Canada's group.
Yes.
Yeah. And then you'll executive produce this engraved on a nation document.
Absolutely.
Whitecaps MLS Cup winners. Thanks, James.
Thanks,
Great
James.
catching up.